Tell me, youngling, have you ever seen a Terran? You have? A ship, perhaps? Yes? Ah, then. There are few among the stars who have seen a ship, for the Terrans are a new and very few in number species to this galactic game that all races will play. You have seen a transport ship, a cargo hauler. No? A frigate. A dreadnought. A dreadnought. I've underestimated you, youngling. How many revolutions have passed you by? It is so, and already your hide is patched with the scars of your prowess. Tell me, youngling, have you known fear? Have its cold hands stroked your spine and turned your belly to ice? A Terran dreadnought is a predator of the void, a ship built upon one purpose and one purpose only: war. The smallest child can look upon its brutal features and know its intent with the utmost certainty. What did the sight of this demon do to your flesh? My apologies, of course it is beyond rudeness for me to ask. Your claws are sharp and your armor strong. Your horns gleam proudly in the light of many suns. You bare your throat to no one. There are few who would challenge your muscles or seek to rend the sinews from your bones. But here I stand. I have seen nearly 3 times the revolutions of you, youngling. My armor is like the bedrock of a homeworld, with the scars of my battles etched upon its surface. My claws still shine as the hardest alloy, and my throat has been bared to no creature among the stars. And yet I have known such fear that will wrench the heart from your chest. Nah, I am ashamed not to admit it. I have seen Terran ships. I have struggled with their ships on the edge of the black. Their ships do not frighten me, no matter how cold I feel the void beyond my hull. For I have seen a Terran, the flesh and blood behind their machines of war. You call me a coward. Not with your mouth, for such an insult would allow me my right to crush you into the ground, but with your heart. Behind closed lips, you think to yourself that I am a fool, that it is the failing heart of warriors like me that caused the war to loose from our grasp and our now dead planets to be twisted from our fingers. If such a warrior as you, had been hatched from his mother's egg, the Terrans would have fled at the very sight. No doubt their planet, nay their system, would have been swallowed by the cold, and the Shrike homeworlds would remain prosperous and powerful. If only. I do, of course, apologize with my heart of hearts for failing your unborn self. Perhaps you should lead the scattered remnants of our people in glorious conquest, to drive the Terrans again into the black from which we woke them? Fool, you know not of what you speak. Let me tell you, youngling, of the 3 times I have seen a Terran. The first was upon their planet, yes, their own small, dense rock. I and I alone claim the honor of the first alien to draw their atmo into my lungs. You know of their planet? I shall tell you regardless, for the stories of the war are grounded now more in myth than fact. Their planet is small, but a molten core gives it more weight than is apparent. I still remember the tiredness in my bones from slogging through their gravity. Ha! You think you are strong? That planet would grind you into the dirt, half-grown pup that you are. And when you come into the strength that is promised you when you reach maturity, it will not matter, for their planet's atmos stinks of low oxygen. You are weak, and I welcome a challenge from the insult I give you. Nah, I thought not. But weaker still is a Terran. Small, far shorter in height, but dense and surprisingly strong for their size, as are most high-grav species. But unlike most, they are soft. Internal skeletal structures leave their organs exposed. They boast no natural weapons and only 5 senses. 5. Their metabolism is inefficient and their reactions slow. Almost every species on their homeworld is faster, stronger, quicker in some way. I am told in the past that the competing species were even more deadly. I scarce believed. But they hunted to extinction or domesticated those who threatened. Terrans now keep the survivors as pets, no more dangerous than the littlest of our own. Not like our pets in reinforced cages, but loose, completely subservient to their masters. Bred to be docile, harmless, weak fauna for a weak species. The tale must be told truthfully, though, so I admit, as all dominant species in their homeworlds, they are adapted to their planet. Their forms hold a kind of strength. Terrans can endure far longer than we shriek. They can sustain near maximal physical exertion for hours. Their shock resistance is astonishing. Hyperactive scar tissue and overclocked cell metabolism will heal them from almost any wound that does not immediately kill. Because of this, they regard minor torture as routine surgery. Even amputation is a completely viable medical procedure. All this to say, they are easy to kill, but difficult to make sure they are dead. Do you understand? Their soldiers perhaps were stronger than most, but still vulnerable to claws and horns. I can even now recall the warrior joy of melee combat, of throwing them away from me as if the gravity was like our own. Of their slow reaction times like they were swimming in water. A warrior knows no satisfaction more than turning the blade of a knife with scales, and in retaliation driving a fist through manufactured body armor and leaving them to bleed in the dust. Tech? Primitive. They still relied on archaic computer systems. Their military used kinetic rounds. They were confined to their own atmosphere without the use of fuel cells. Combustion engines hadn't been seen on our planet for centuries. We held dominion in every aspect that we could imagine, and we took from them what we would, despite any protest they could mount. It was too late when we realized we had handed them the key to our own destruction. I beg you listen closely, for Terrans are mentally unimpressive, unless you give them a push, just a nudge forward. When given an idea, they will worry at it until they have teased forth every prize hidden therein, and we expose the secrets of their own biology. You have heard of the horrors they unleashed? Of the sickness that covered their homeworld and drove us back into the void? You call them cowards? Unhonorable? I can see a point, clouded as it may be from your anger. It is indeed true that a warrior should surrender when the battle is finished, so as to spare the lives of those under him. A child will continue to rage and cry when it has not had its way. A warrior will bow, and in so doing earn the respect and favor of his opponent. But answer me, youngling, would you bare your throat in defeat? Would I? We are not so different, the Terrans and the Shrike. Ours are warrior races, proud and unbending, with histories of combat spanning millennia. If the scales had been reversed, would we not have destroyed our homeworlds to spite our enemy? Even more so had they done to us what we committed against them. I admit, at this time I was young, as you are now, and I thought them the lowest scum of the galaxy, because their warriors would not fight, kinetic rifles against energy weapons or fist against horn. I hated, but I did not fear the Terrans. The second time I saw a Terran was in the twilight of our homeworlds, during the shrapnel rain that baptized our planet in steel and fire. Still, their fleets would not fight, and I thrice cursed them for the craven beings that they were. You know of their tech, of their jump drives, of this before-unseen ability to travel the cold without the guidance of a relay station. They kept our fleets isolated, alone on the edge of the black. For every time our ships would move, the dreadnoughts would spawn from the darkness of hyperspace and herd us back, away from the FTL lanes or our allies. We understood that we were alone, and for the first time we became serious in our planning of the war. You have heard the hushed murmurs of the shrapnel rain? Of course you have, as have all that remains of the shriek. But hark to my words, what you have heard is as a rodent attempting to explain the physics of a tesseract. I cannot describe the nightmare that was the twilight of our homeworlds. The surface of our planet was lifeless. Even now there are places that still burn, underground fires that will consume the core for decades. We were trapped inside our own planet, inside the tunnels and burrows that we had constructed for just such an eventuality. Do not mistake me, we were prepared for siege, for our engineers were cunning. We could have withstood assault for centuries, and our allies with fleets equal to our own, would have grown curious in a far shorter time frame and come to our aid. Still, there is no way to convey the dread that grips your belly as you hear the crump of bombs on the surface, a paltry few miles above you. The terror that spreads frost through the marrow of your bones as fractures appear in the ceiling above your head. Ordnance developed for surface penetration. They would still not stand and fight with our defensive fleets, but jumped around, through, and past to deploy their bombers into our atmo, leveling our cities twice over. But still we fought. Our fighters and anti-aircraft batteries thinned their bomber formations again and again. Their losses were far heavier than ours, and we were not much worried. For what homeworld has the resources for a war of attrition on such a scale? If they wanted our planet, they must come in person and wrench it from our grasp, and we were prepared for their sickness. Such a trick would not work again. Their tech had progressed since we had struggled with them last, but still we knew, under their armored suits, their soldiers were weak and their weapons simple. Yet they came anyway to meet us fist to horn. And I told you of... Yes, I did. They brought their pets, and their pets were pets no longer. But I told myself I was not afraid. The third time I saw a Terran was at the ending of days. Do you remember this time? You were still a squalling babe reaching for your mother, though I can see in your eyes that you remember. Not fully realized memories, you had seen far too few revolutions for that, but emotions. You remember sorrow and hunger. And you remember the quiet for a species on the edge of extinction does not idly converse. Our fleets were stranded on the edge of the black, cut off from all contact. the dregs of our people were alone. The sum of our power was confined to 4 outpost moons orbiting a gas giant. We lived in abandoned mining camps. Us! The Shrike! But we stood together. Not like us now. You and I and the rest of this tribe in hiding on this backwater planet. Sometimes when the wind howls outside the ring of my firelight, I wonder what became of the other refugees, if any others crawled away from the Terran's wrath. But we had determined to hold the moons until the last warrior breathed his final breath. We had nowhere left to go, and after all our fleets had hence been nigh untouched. Jump drives had spirited away the dreadnoughts of the Terran Navy, to escape before we maneuvered our broadsides to bear. To erase our existence among the stars they would, finally, have to meet us hull to hull, and our Navy was still formidable against any in the galaxy, or we would wager, the ones surrounding it. We thought they were fools, the Terrans, when they slid from behind the curtain of hyperspace around our fleet. Finally they would stand and fight, and we would reduce their ships to scrap. Our crews smiled with revenge in their hearts, and readied the cannons for broadsides with power that had never before been dreamed of. Ah! It was glorious! Never again will the Shrike be seen in full battle glory. The sun of our homeworlds had not the power of our fleets. But our glory dimmed slowly at first, as dreadnought after dreadnought dropped from the higher dimensions. You tell me you have seen one and you were not afraid. But you would be afraid as their jumps leached away the light of our star. And as we watched their dreadnoughts advance, caring not of the rending of their hulls, and saw the glitter of energy blasts and mass drivers in the sky, their dropships and troop transports impacted the surface of our moons. And so, for the last time I did not fear the Terran, but I feared what the Terran would bring at his side. The dropship was flaming, I remember. A shell from our anti-aircraft emplacements had torn a gaping maw into the hull on its journey through Atmo. The Terran soldier stepped through the breached plating. He was no longer as weak or slow. His form was armored and augmented with machines and processors, and his biology was enhanced with the secrets we had unlocked. There were signs and symbols scrawled across his armor. The broken horns of a Shrike warrior stamped on his chest in red, and on the shoulder script. He was labeled as a devil named after his pet. A shot took him in the chest, just below his shoulder, and he spun to the ground, landing on one knee. His bowed head rose slowly, his helmet painted with a Terran skull that grinned at me. He stood, his armor still smoking, his rifle dangling from one hand, and raised his arm to point. And from behind him, from the wreckage of the dropship, stepped his pet, nearly as tall as the Terran and twice as long, armored as the soldier. As surely as aggression and raw power can be bred out of a species, it can be granted to it again. But the domestication had been reserved, and the pet was loyal like no animal our species has ever known.